And now the story of Dawood and Sulaiman alayhi salam is mentioned. وَدَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ, meaning وَذْكُرْ, and also mention them. Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam. They were prophets from who? From the Bani Israel, from the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. إِذْ يَحْكُمَانِ, when they both made a judgment. Concerning what? فِي الْحَرْثِ, concerning the crop, concerning the field. Al-Harth is used for the field on which there is crop, and Al-Harth is also used for the crop itself. So it can be applied to the field, and it can also be applied to the crop itself. So إِذْ يَحْكُمَانِ فِي الْحَرْثِ, when they both made judgment concerning the crop. Which crop? Which field? إِذْ نَفَشَتْ, when it overran. Nafashat is from the root letters Noon, Fa, Sheen. And nafsh is to scatter wool. What does it mean? It is to scatter wool, to break it into pieces, and then it is to spread it. What do we learn? كَالْعِهْنِ الْمَنْفُوشِ, mountains will be like carded wool. That wool that has been broken up into pieces, it has been fluffed up, and it has been spread everywhere. And nafashat fihi ghanamul qawmi. Nafshul ghanam, the nafsh of sheep, is when the sheep and goats, they spread over a field. Because if you look at it, the way they're spread over a field as they're grazing, it seems as though they're cotton balls that have been thrown, that have been scattered over the field. Especially sheep, because there's a lot of wool on them. And especially this word is used when the sheep or goats, they have strayed by night due to the negligence of the shepherd. And they have ended up on a field where they were not supposed to be, and they've eaten it all up, they've literally destroyed it all up. Why? Because the shepherd was not there. He was negligent. He didn't close the shed properly or something, and somehow the sheep managed to escape overnight. And as they escaped, they ended up in a field, let's say that of grapevines, and you can imagine what would happen to all those lovely grapevines. So this house, this field, إِذْ نَفَشَتْ فِيهِ, when the ghanamul qawm, when the sheep of a people, what happened? They overran into that field. They entered on that field during the night, and they destroyed that whole field. It is said that it was of grapevines. وَكُنَّا, and we were, لِحُكْمِهِمْ, for their judgment, shahideen, one to witness. Meaning Allah witnessed the judgment that both Dawood made and also that Sulaiman a.s. made. Now what is this referring to? It is said that at the time when Dawood a.s. was the king, as well as a prophet. Remember that Dawood a.s., he was given prophethood by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well as kingdom. So while he was a king, there was a field that belonged to a particular person, and that field was destroyed by someone else's sheep at night. That field, that orchard, it was destroyed by someone else's sheep at night. So the owner of the field, he came to Dawood a.s. asking for decision, that what should be done? My crop has been destroyed by the sheep of this man. Because think about it, looking after a field is not something easy. Growing a crop, taking care of it, is not something easy at all. You know, people who have a vegetable patch, if one day a bunny comes, a rabbit comes and eats up all their crop, how devastating it is. That the person put in so much effort to prepare the ground, and then he put in so much effort to sow the seeds, and then every day after work he's coming and giving water, and one day this rabbit comes and he's munching on all of those beautiful lovely tomatoes and those plants and those leaves, destroying the entire crop. So you can imagine it's a lot of hard work that is required, and if a whole herd of sheep come and the whole field is gone. So this man came to Dawood a.s. asking for some decision. So Dawood a.s., he ruled, he gave the decision that the owner of the field, he should keep the sheep. He should be given the sheep. Why? Because the value of the sheep was the same as the value of the field. So the damage that had been caused to his field would be made up by what? By the sheep that would be given to him. So you understand the decision that he made? That the owner of the sheep, because it's his fault, he didn't look after his sheep, what should he do? He should give up his sheep to the owner of the field. But Sulaiman a.s., he was listening. And who was he? He was a son of Dawood alayhi salam. And remember, he was not yet a king or a prophet. He was still very young. So Sulaiman alayhi salam, he suggested that a better resolution is that the owner of the field, he should keep the sheep temporarily and he should benefit from the sheep. Who? The owner of the field, of the house. While the shepherd, what should he do? He should look after the field, the crop, and he should look after it, maintain it until it grows back to how it was. And when the crop is ready, when the field is ready, when the damage has been repaired, when everything has been fixed, then what should be done? The sheep should be returned to the shepherd, and the field should be given to who? The farmer. So this was the decision that Sulaiman alayhi salam suggested. Now when Dawood alayhi salam, he heard this, he liked it. So he accepted it and he gave that judgment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says over here that وَدَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ إِذْ يَحْكُمَانِ فِي الْحَرْثِ إِذْ نَفَشَتْ فِيهِ غَنَمُ الْقَوْمِ وَكُنَّا لِحُكْمِهِمْ شَاهِدِينَ. We watched, we observed the decision of both of them. What Dawood suggested and also what Sulaiman alayhi salam suggested, and what they unanimously agreed to do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala observed the decision of both of them. Allah says, فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا, and we gave understanding of it. To who? Sulaymana, to Sulaiman alayhi salam. The problem came before both of them. Sulaiman alayhi salam was not obligated to solve that problem, but he saw the problem. It came before him. And the solution of that problem, who was made to understand it? Sulaiman alayhi salam. فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا Sulaiman. وَكُلًّا, and all, meaning both of them, the father and the son, آتَيْنَا, we gave hukman, judgment, and also وَعِلْمًا, and also knowledge. Both of them, they were given prophethood, they were given wisdom, they were given sound judgment, and they were also given knowledge. Now what do we learn from this incident? First of all, we see that the messengers of Allah, they are of a very noble rank, they are of a very high status, but nevertheless they're still human beings. They are of very high status, but still they're human beings. So we see that yes, Dawood alayhi salam, he gave a judgment. Sulaiman alayhi salam, he gave a judgment, but one judgment was better than the other. So just because Dawood alayhi salam did not give the perfect solution does not mean that he was less of a prophet. No. After all, he was a human being. He had prophethood, he had knowledge, he had wisdom, but still he was a human being. Also we see over here, another very important lesson that we learn from this incident is that sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives understanding of a matter. He gives the correct judgment to a particular problem to one person and not the other. Now it doesn't mean that the one who was able to come up with the solution, he is definitely smarter, he is definitely better, and he should be made superior to the other immediately. No. He was able to understand because Allah gave him the understanding. What do we see over here? فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا Sulaiman. The problem with us is that we generalize a lot. Just because this person gave a solution in this matter, this is why he should be put right at the top. Whereas he only gave the right solution to only one problem, only one matter, only one situation. It doesn't mean we begin to generalize. We also see over here that someone who is younger can come up with a better solution. And the one who is older, the one who is superior, should not think that if he accepts that suggestion, it will reduce in his status. Because we see that Dawood a.s. when he saw that Sulaiman a.s. suggestion was better, what did he do? He accepted it. He implemented it. So there should be no ego that should stop us, that should prevent us from accepting the truth. Because we see that the people of Ibrahim a.s., what prevented them from accepting the truth? It was their ego, despite the fact that the truth was clear to them. So sometimes, even with us, what happens? If our child is telling us something right, if someone who is lesser than us in knowledge, in position, in rank, in age, if they're telling us something that is right, we don't accept it just because they're lesser than us. But we see that this is not appropriate. If the Prophet of Allah accepted, then who are we to not accept? When the focus is everyone's benefit, then a person does not say, I will look so bad, that my decision was not that great. I will look not that superior anymore. No, there should be no ego over here. And we see that the messengers, They had very open hearts and open minds. That Dawood alayhi salam, he accepted. He did not say that you're so young, you're not yet a king, so stay in your position, you shouldn't be speaking in front of adults, and stay put, do not speak over here. No. He was very open-minded, he had a very open heart, he accepted what his son had to say. We also see that if anyone is able to do something good, then he should realize that it is only by the tawfiq of Allah. That if someone who is very young in age, if they manage to excel beyond those who are older than him, then what should he remember? That this is by the tawfiq of Allah. This is not because he's very smart, very intelligent. This is because he puts in a lot of effort. No. It's purely by the tawfiq of Allah. And if Allah has given that tawfiq, He can also take it away. So never feel proud. Because sometimes what happens that, for instance, if a young child, if he memorizes the Qur'an at a very young age, people praise him so much that they, make him so arrogant about what he has done, that he begins to boast about it. This is not appropriate. We should teach our children at the same time that if you have accomplished this, it is only by the tawfiq of Allah. Because when a person thinks it's my own doing, then he begins to be very arrogant. And we also see over here that وَكُلًّا آتَيْنَا حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا, that all of them were given hukm and ilm. So just because Dawood alayhi salam did not make the good decision, the good judgment at this point, it does not mean that his rank was reduced. No, it wasn't reduced. He still had a very high rank. He still held a very high position. وَكُلًّا آتَيْنَا حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. Therefore, we should not generalize. وَسَخَّرْنَا, and we subjected مَعَ دَاوُودَ, with Dawood. This is why Dawood a.s. is praised afterwards. That yes, Sulaiman a.s. made the better decision at this point. However, don't forget the status of Dawood. That وَسَخَّرْنَا مَعَ دَاوُودَ الْجِبَالَ, we had subjected the mountains with Dawood a.s. We had subjected them for him. Why? What would these mountains do? يُسَبِّحْنَا, they would exalt. They would do tasbih of Allah. With who? With Dawood a.s. And it wasn't just the mountains that would do tasbih, but also وَالطَّيْرَ, as well as the birds. وَكُنَّا فَاعِلِينَ, and we were the ones who were doing this. So don't find it too amazing. Don't think that it's impossible. No. Allah was doing this and anything is possible for Him. What do we see over here? That when Dawood a.s., when he would do tasbih of Allah, the mountains and the birds, they would also participate in that tasbih. Dawood a.s. was given the Zabur. And the Zabur, it is said that it was a collection of 114 hymns. 114 poems, you can say, with praise of Allah. So that is what he was given. And along with that, he was blessed with a very beautiful voice. He was blessed with a very beautiful voice. So whenever he would read those hymns, whenever he would recite them, whenever he would begin to praise Allah, he would begin to glorify Allah, the birds, they would stop, they would begin to chirp with him, they would begin to hover in the air, and they would repeat after him. And the mountains also would join in. Now some have said that the mountains doing tasbih of Allah, this means that they would echo. As he would do tasbih, the mountains, the sound would echo within the mountains. Now okay, it's understandable. However, remember that if anyone begins to yell within the mountains, what's going to happen? There's going to be echo. If you honk your car, if you yell, if you say anything, there's going to be echo. If it's loud enough to really produce an echo. So, over here, tasbih should be understood as tasbih. Tasbih should be understood as tasbih. In Surah Al-Isra, ayah 44, what do we learn? وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. You do not understand how they do tasbih, but everything does tasbih. And remember, there are two types of tasbih. Tasbih of maqal as well as hal, as well as through state. So Allahu A'lam how exactly these mountains and these birds would do tasbih, but what do we learn? That they did do tasbih along with Dawood a.s. In Surah Saba, ayah number 10, we learn, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ مِنَّا فَضْلًا يَا جِبَالُ أَوِّبِي مَعَهُ وَالطَّيْرَ. And we certainly gave Dawood from us bounty. And we said, O mountains, repeat our praises with him, and the birds as well. In Surah Sad, ayah 18 to 19, we learn, إِنَّا سَخَّرْنَا الْجِبَالَ مَعَهُ يُسَبِّحْنَا بِالْعَشِيِّ وَالْإِشْرَاقِ وَالطَّيْرَ مَحْشُورَةً كُلٌّ لَهُ أَوَّابٍ. In particular in this ayah, what is mentioned? That in the late afternoon and after sunrise, at these 2 times in particular, they would do tasbih along with him. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ, and we had taught him through wahi. What? صَنْعَةَ لَبُوسٍ, fashioning of coats of armor. صَنْعَةَ لَبُوسٍ. صَنْعَة is from the root letter صاد نون عين. And صنعة, صنعة, يصنعون, يصنع. What does it mean? To manufacture something, to make something skillfully, to produce something. Workmanship. So he was taught the art of making labusin lakum. Labus actually means clothing. Literally, what does the word labus mean? Clothing, garments. That which is worn. And it also applies to coats of mail, suits of plate armor, or you can say chain mail. Why? Because they are also worn just as clothes are worn. And remember that clothes are worn for the purpose of protection. You protect yourself from cold, you protect yourself from heat, you protect yourself from the eyes of other people, and you also protect yourself from the violence, the physical violence. So, labus over here, it refers to, what does it refer to? Chainmail, coats of armor. So, صَنْعَةَ لَبُوسٍ لَكُمْ. And lakum, you refers to all people. Because Dawood a.s. was the first one to ever make chainmail. He was the first one to ever make coats of armor. لِتُحْصِنَكُمْ, and because he was the first one to do it after him, this continued, and as a result, people till today, they benefit from this. لِتُحْصِنَكُمْ, so it protects you, مِنْ بَأْسِكُمْ, from your battle, meaning from your physical violence. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ شَاكِرُونَ, so will you then be grateful? Qatada said that before Dawood a.s., the people used to wear plated armor. Plated armor. You understand what that would be? You know, it's very awkward to move in that stuff. Because it's like clothing that is made of plates of, sheets of, you can say, some metal that would protect you. But imagine if you're wearing something as stiff as that, how difficult it would be for you to move. That you're just standing like that, you can't move. It's very difficult. So, up until then, people used to wear plated armor. And Dawood a.s. was the first one to make rings of chain armor. So he was the first one to make such chainmail that is made of links, rings. Because when they're links, then what happens? As you wear it, it becomes easier for you to bend your hand, to move your arms, to move back and forth. It's more flexible. Whereas plated armor, it's not flexible. You're stiff in that. And the rings of chain armor, they make it more flexible. In Surah Saba, ayah 10 to 11, we learn وَأَلَنَّا لَهُ الْحَدِيدِ أَنِعْمَلْ سَابِغَاتٍ وَقَدِّرْ فِي السَّرْدِ. And we made pliable for him iron. Iron was made very soft for him. He discovered how to manufacture things with iron. And he was told, make full coats of mail and calculate precisely the links. So he was taught how to make this by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what do we see over here? That many things people have invented, people have discovered, people have made them over time. But many of these things we take them for granted. Or we think that this is discovery and human invention and people have discovered this, people have invented this. So why be grateful to God for this? What has got to do with this? But we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who inspired Dawood a.s. He is the one who inspired him to do this. Similarly, Idris a.s., he was the first one to use the pen. He was the one to invent the needle. Remember? We learned earlier. So, many of these things that human beings have invented, that human beings do, they were inspired by who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also if you look at it, the way many things have been discovered, that all of a sudden a person sees an apple falling from the tree and he realizes, oh, there is this energy, there is this force, there is this gravity that is pulling everything towards it. Did he not see anything fall down before? Did he not see anything fall down before? Of course he did. Many things he saw falling down before. But what is it that at that point he understood that there's something that is pulling everything towards the earth? Who gave this idea at that point? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's not our intelligence. What do we learn? فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا. Allah gives the understanding. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with so many of these things, فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ شَاكِرُونَ, will you then be grateful or not? Won't you be grateful? Why aren't you grateful? You use all of these blessings. Yes, the people of the past, they invented them. They discovered them. They made them. But you should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of these blessings. Because they are making your life so much easier for you. Now just imagine if there was no internet, if there were no computers. How difficult it would be to do your work today. How impossible it would be. So we should be grateful for these blessings as well. Generally when we think of blessings, we think of food. Because Allah causes the food to grow. We think of life. We think of health. But these are also blessings. The inventions, the discoveries that people have made over time. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has inspired them. وَلِسُلَيْمَانَ, and for Sulaiman alayhi salam, الرِّيحَ, the wind. Meaning, وَسَخَّرْنَا لِسُلَيْمَانَ الرِّيحَ. In the previous ayah, what was mentioned? The mountains were subjected for Dawood alayhi salam. In this ayah, what is mentioned? The wind being subjected for Sulaiman alayhi salam. But which wind was subjected for him? عَاصِفَةً, that which blew forcefully. Asifa is such wind that blows violently. A violent wind. A hurricane, almost you can say. So a very fast wind. So such wind was subjected for him. At another place in the Quran, in Surah Sad, ayah 36, the wind that was subjected for Sulaiman a.s. is described as رُخَاءً. فَسَخَّرْنَا لَهُ الرِّيحَ تَجْرِي بِأَمْرِهِ رُخَاءً حَيْثُ أَصَابَ. And rukha means gently. So we see that wind was subjected to him. It was up to him to determine the speed of the wind. He could make it very fast. He could make it very slow. Tajri bi amrihi, it would flow at his command. If he wanted it to be extremely fast, he could do that. Very slow, he could do that. And where would it take him? إِلَى الْأَرْضِ, to the land. Which land? الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا, which we had blessed. Which land is this? The land of Ash-Sham. Why is that mentioned? Would the wind only take him over there? No, it would take him wherever he wanted. But this land in particular is mentioned because this is where Baytul Maqdis was. This is where the center of his rule was. This was the capital city, you can say. So this is why this land is mentioned in particular. وَكُنَّا بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَالِمِينَ, and we were of everything ones who know. So we see that wind was under the control of Sulaiman a.s., which made air travel possible for him. It is said that when Sulaiman a.s. wanted to travel, he would take his entire army and they would embark on the wind and go wherever he wanted to go, east or north or south, wherever. Now how exactly? Allahu A'lam. If today we can somehow make planes fly that are so huge, so heavy, then definitely, somehow or the other, they were also able to embark on the wind itself. And they were able to travel from one place to the other. Air travel was possible for them. In Surah Saba, ayah number 12, we learn, وَلِسُلَيْمَانَ الرِّيحَ غُدُوُّهَا شَهْرٌ وَرَوَاحُهَا شَهْرٌ. How fast was this wind? How quickly they could travel by air? That to Sulaiman, we subjected the wind, its morning journey was that of a month. Meaning what? They could cover in one morning was what people would cover in 1 month. And its afternoon journey was that of a month. Meaning what they could cover in an afternoon through the wind, people would generally cover that distance in an entire month. So we see that it was extremely fast. And this should not be difficult for us to understand today, especially because through planes you can get from one continent, to the other continent in literally a matter of a few hours. That's it. Where those same journeys would take months before. Now those distances are covered literally in a few hours. وَمِنَ الشَّيَاطِينِ, and from the shayateen, meaning, and we also subjected some shayateen for him. The jinn were also under his control, And these jinn, what would they do for him? Man hu yaghusuna lahu. They would dive for him. Yaghusuna from ghain wa sad, ghaus. And ghaus is to dive into the sea in order to extract pearls. So they would dive into the sea for him, into the bahr, in order to extract pearls from there. Yaghusuna lahu. Just imagine, he would send jinn. They would go underwater and they would find pearls and they would extract them and bring them out. And not just this, but وَيَعْمَلُونَ, and they would also do work, amalan, a work, duna dhalik, other than that. So it wasn't just that he used them to extract pearls from the sea, but he also subjected them to other tasks. What other tasks? We learn in Surah Sad, ayah 37, وَالشَّيَاطِينَ كُلَّ بَنَّاءٍ وَغَوَّاصٍ. And the shayateen, we subjected them, every builder and diver. So they were used to dive as well as construct many buildings. In Surah Saba, ayah 12 to 13, we learn, وَمِنَ الْجِنِّ مَنْ يَعْمَلُ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِ. And among the jinn were those who work for him by the permission of his Lord. So, they used to do many different things. They were under his command, and this was possible. How? By the permission of Allah. Because remember that it is not appropriate to control the jinn today. That a person cannot say, I have a jinn under my control, in my possession, and I get a lot of work done through him. Because we had this discussion earlier as well. Because you cannot really have a jinn in your control. How can you? Can you physically trap him? Can you physically do something to him? No, you can't even see him. So how do you know where he is? It's possible that he's deceiving you, he's lying to you. He's not doing what you're telling him to do. Because the jinn are hidden from us. They're in ghaib. We cannot see them. So, it's difficult for us to control them. So how is it possible for Sulaiman a.s.? Allah says, وَكُنَّا لَهُمْ حَافِظِينَ. We were guarding them. We were watching them. We were observing the jinn. That yes, the jinn were under His command, but Allah was watching the jinn to make sure that they were actually listening to Sulaiman a.s. Do you understand? Allah was watching the jinn to make sure that they were actually listening to Sulaiman a.s. In Surah Saba, ayah 12 to 13, we learn that وَمِنَ الْجِنِّ مَنْ يَعْمَلُ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِ وَمَنْ يَزِغْ مِنْهُمْ عَنْ أَمْرِنَا نُذِقْهُ مِنْ عَذَابِ السَّعِيرِ. That they would obey Sulaiman a.s. by the permission of Allah, and whoever deviated among them from our command, we will make him taste of the punishment of the blaze. So by law, by sharia, in a way, the jinn were told to obey Sulaiman a.s. And if they disobeyed, they were made to taste the punishment of the blaze. And what would they do? يَعْمَلُونَ لَهُ مَا يَشَاءُ مِمَّ مَحَارِيبَ وَتَمَاثِيلَ وَجِفَانٍ كَالْجَوَابِ وَقُدُورِ الرَّاسِيَاتِ. And they made for him what he willed. Whatever he wanted, the jinn would make for him. What? Elevated chambers, statues, bowls like reservoirs, and stationary kettles. And inshallah we'll do the details of all of these when we get there. They require a lot of detail. So we see that Sulaiman a.s. was granted immense power, a lot of authority. That it wasn't just that he had a great kingdom where many people were under him, but he was given a lot of knowledge. He was given a lot of sound judgment. He was given prophethood. And we also learned that he was able to understand the language of the birds as well as the ants. And he had armies of humans and armies of birds and armies of jinn. And okay, birds and human beings you can control, but how did he control the jinn? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controlled them. He put them under the command of Sulaiman a.s. And if any one of them dared to disobey Sulaiman a.s., he was punished immediately. وَكُنَّا لَهُمْ حَافِظِينَ. And these jinn, they constructed many things for Sulaiman a.s. And if you look at it, there are some people who have said that the buildings that were constructed at the time of Sulaiman a.s., those of them that are being discovered today, that are being excavated today, people are amazed at how such buildings could be constructed back then. So many, many years ago. So Allahu A'lam, if they're really those buildings, then He used the jinn to make them. So it wasn't difficult for Him. So we see that in all of these prophets of Allah, they were successful. Why? Because they held on to the truth. They led people. They guided the people. They led the people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. And they were also blessed with many, many things because of their sacrifices, because of their efforts in the way of Allah. And Allah chose them, He bestowed them with many, many favors. And we see that when they were given all of these favors, they did not abuse them. They did not abuse them. They rather used them in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a sign of a righteous servant. That he sacrifices in the way of Allah, he holds on to Allah, he does not rely upon himself, he does not rely upon his intelligence, and whatever he is given by Allah, he uses it in the proper way. He uses it correctly. He takes advantage of all those opportunities. And with that, he only excels. Recitation. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.